Hello, so I am Toni Collis from the University of Edinburgh, and I do have a multitude of affiliations, and I'm here representing quite a large number of them today. You're going to hear a lot about many different aspects of the work I do. Primarily, I'm employed by EPCC, formerly Edinburgh Parallel Computing Centre at the University of Edinburgh. That's my day job. In my day job, I'm absolutely privileged to be a member of the team that helps run Archer, the National Supercomputing Service, which is a great honour, and I get to play with that machine day in, day out, and I don't think there's anything better than that. And as part of that, another one of my job titles is I'm Director of Women in High Performance Computing, which I will tell you more about shortly. All of these things here, I've just mentioned, all come into this theme of bringing HPC to everyone. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So just to kick off, I have to talk about Archer because it's something I'm very fond of. Archer is officially the UK National Supercomputing Service. I think it's the third fastest machine in the UK now. It was the fastest machine in the UK when it first went in the top 500. Went in at number 19 in the top 500. It's now dropped down a wee bit because it's a few years old. It's a Cray XC30 machine, and it's funded by EPSRC and NERC primarily. And therefore, you'll already know that the majority of the stuff it does is climate science from the NERC side and materials stuff from the EPSRC side. And actually, very exciting, yesterday we turned on our KNL nodes. So anybody here use Archer? I'm going to try and make you put up your hands. You've not been very active today. We're just sat there. Who uses Archer? Who's excited about the KNL nodes? Just me. Okay, a few people. So yeah, let's all go. And luckily, as part of Archer, one of my jobs really is to try and help people use Archer. And I think it's particularly interesting being here and talking about the Bear service, which I think my next slide shows you the tiers that we refer to in the UK for where we sit. So Archer is a tier 1 service. Bear is a tier 3 service. We've heard about tier 2. We've heard about the fastest machines in the world in China, the next generation that are happening in the US. They are sort of tier 0. We normally talk about price in the UK when we talk about tier 0, for those of you who know what price are. But all this, it's a big community. And it's a community that advances science. And actually not just science now, social sciences and humanities, and far, far more things. But if we are only targeting a small number of people, we are failing. We are absolutely failing. What we do in HPC should be accessible to everybody. We really are here to change the world. What we do impacts everybody, every day. I think it's fantastic, for example, that HPC really did save lives when they were predicting where Hurricane Sandy was going to hit in New York. That is an example, along with the stuff to do with Zika virus and Ebola that we've heard about today, how what we do impacts society fundamentally. But that also means that everybody needs to have a chance to interact with what we do. Just to give you a little bit more about Archer and where it sits, as I said, it's funded by EPSRC and NERC. So you will see there primary uses of Archer in terms of codes of VASP, CASTEP, CP2K, GROMACS. Those are all ab initio. Well, GROMACS is a molecular dynamics, a classical molecular dynamics code. So you see straight away dominated by the EPSRC stuff. But that is not its only limit. I'm not going to give you a quote from the president of Data Vortex, who is a good friend of mine, but is also challenging us all to change how we interact with HPC. This community is charged more than any other for responsibly charting our future course and the preservation of the planet. That is absolutely true. That's why I quote her, because really, we are at the forefront of changing the world. It seems a bit cliche to say that, but no, we are. But if we're excluding people, that's a problem. She went on to say, women are in it for the long haul. We play an extremely important role in this, and that's absolutely true as well. And women are one of the groups I'm going to talk about today that we need to engage more, but it goes further than that. Why do we need to bring HPC to everyone? Other than I just think it's a good idea and I'm here talking to you about it. Well, I hope many of us would agree that you shouldn't not be able to do something just because of who you are. I think today that's generally seen as an unacceptable thing. There are plenty of barriers in life, but just because you're black, white, male, female, you're religious, you're not religious, whoever you are, that should have no impediment. I think everybody today pretty much agrees with that. The other benefit, of course, is that we know that diverse teams have a big impact on research output. Your citation rate goes up, your publication rate goes up, you can measure team IQ, your team IQ goes up when you have a diverse team. Therefore, it's a really good thing if we get everybody involved. If you look around the room today, you will see the majority of the people in this room today are men, and mainly white men. That says to me that we aren't doing a very good job about diversity. By the way, this is not unusual. In fact, this is actually really quite good compared to many of the things I go to. So we do have an issue. We're not diversifying our workforce. The problem goes deeper than that. HPC really isn't in it for the long haul, as Caroline Devaney said. That means that we're needing to expand our workforce. If we just look at IT, you'll see on the slide there, that in Europe, we expect to need 900,000 IT sector jobs by 2020. That's just the shortfall in IT. HPC is taking an increasingly bigger portion of that workforce role. Similar numbers are prevalent in the US and Canada. US, 19% increase in computer scientists is needed by 2020. Canada needs 182,000 additional IT jobs. But when women are 51% of the European community, and yet when I look at IT, we're down at about, in IT we're about 18%. We look at HPC, it's hard to actually determine how many women there are in HPC, but it's anywhere from 5 to 17%. The more specialized you get, the smaller proportion of women. Women are not well represented. So what's the problem? It's very complicated. That's the main point. If this was an easy problem to solve, we would have solved it by now. There are enough people, even in this room here today, who go, you know what, we need to fix this already. If we knew how to solve it, we'd have fixed it. But when only, I've got this stat there, 17% of IT specialists in the UK are female. But most worryingly still is that IT is the only sector in the UK that has not improved its proportion of women in the last decade. It has increased the proportion, it has increased the flat number of women participating in IT, but the number of men has also increased. It's the only sector that has not improved representation of women. So that's the big problem feeding directly into HPC. Because although HPC is currently dominated by the academic environment, increasingly HPC has been using in industry. If your IT community, your computer scientists that are coming through education are all men, you aren't going to recruit people into HPC. But what we're seeing is an even smaller proportion come into our community than what go through a traditional computer science or physics background. But right now, we have a fantastic opportunity. We are rapidly expanding who uses HPC. You've heard today we've got ecologists using HPC. Deep learning is reaching out into the social sciences. I'm working with some historians at the moment. We have an opportunity to encourage women to move into our field. More importantly, we have an opportunity to reach out to the general public and say, did you know HPC can do this for you? But we've got to work at that. The problem is very complicated. It does start at school age. A lot of people are like, oh, it's not our problem. It starts with tiny toddlers. And you're right, it does start right down here. 2 years old is when children make their first stereotype. And the first stereotype that kicks in is gender roles. At 2 years old. It's heartbreaking and it's scary, but it's there. And it's partly there because guess where that stereotype comes from? It comes from us. We are the ones generating that stereotype for them. It continues all the way through school. We all know that girls drop out of sciences at school. We've all heard the stories of teenage girls turning around and saying, oh no, I can't do science, it's too hard. They're getting straight A's. And they turn around and say it's too hard. We need to do something about that. But now this is the bit where diversity really comes in. It's not just girls. That's the one we talk about a lot. It's the one I talk about a lot. It's not just girls, it's any minority group. If you're in a minority, and at that point, women are not actually in a minority at school. If you're in a minority in your community, you will believe, sadly, a lot of the time that you're less capable. There's a well-known effect called the stereotype threat, which kicks in and is detrimental to people's behavior in this situation. And it's not their fault. It's society's fault for having stereotypes that we all absorb. It's human nature to have stereotypes. We can't help it. But what we can do is combat it. It then continues into undergraduate degrees. And the dropout rate in STEM subjects for girls or leaving STEM is much higher than it is for boys. Continues into postgraduate education. But then across the job sector, women are more likely to leave STEM jobs than men. If you're in a minority group, you're more likely to leave a STEM job than the majority groups. So it applies to not just women. So what are we doing about it? And this is the exciting bit. As part of Archer, we have a project called Archer Outreach. Small little part of Archer, but on some level, it's one of the things that's having the biggest impact. We're a small group, really, but what we are trying to do is reach every corner of the UK and beyond. It's in 4 threads. Engagement. Some of you may have heard of Archer champions. I'm sure I've seen a couple of champions in the room today. Go on, put your hand up. Be brave. Okay, nobody. I'm sure I saw some Archer champions here. The Archer champions movement is really something that I think Bear can utilize as well. We want people championing HPC, going into universities, being present in that university and saying, okay, you need HPC for your research needs this HPC, this much compute, this service is best for you, either institutional, tier 2, or tier 1, possibly going up to praise. And the whole point of the Archer Champions group is to help the researchers in universities find the best resource for them. And when they're ready, push them up. Alternatively say, you know what, you don't actually need that much compute power. Why don't you look at this resource instead? You'll find it a bit easier to get on board there. And this is where I believe that we have a duty, everybody in this room who's coming to this launch today, to go out there and ask our colleagues, do you need HPC and which one's the best for you? Impact. We talk about impact a lot because, yay, it's great, it gets us funding, right? The cynics in us. It goes further than that. If we can actually demonstrate to the general public and our colleagues that what we do with HPC is important, it doesn't just bring in the next round of funding, it brings in the next generation of HPC people. It tells them it's worth listening to. It's worth going through a 4-year degree doing computer science. I have to admit, I did a physics degree. I did a physics degree because I wanted to be an astronaut when I was 13 years old. And I thought, how do you become an astronaut? You know, I didn't do a physics degree because I loved physics at school, because to be honest, wiring a plug was kind of dull. And that's what I did in A-level physics. It's the only thing I remember actually from A-level physics. I did a physics degree because of what I thought I could do afterwards. What we need to do is build our impact case studies, take them around to the general public and say, did you know that this is what HPC can do? Did you know that you can solve this problem? Did you know the reason why we know climate change is happening is because of HPC? Did you know this? Did you know that? The onus is on us here today to get that message out. But I'm very happy to say that we're doing our little bit with Archer. And that brings us into the 2 final threads that I'm going to focus on the most, which are outreach and diversity. How do you reach millions of children? I don't know how many children there are in the UK, but there's a ton of them. When we're a small group of scientists based in Edinburgh running Archer, the small answer is you get other people to help you. We went along and did a supercomputing booth at the Big Bang Fair, which is actually here in Birmingham in March this year. There'll be another one next year. We had over 70,000 children come into the hall in one day. We reckon at our booth we had 9,000 individual interactions with school kids. That's a lot of bang for your buck. That's a lot of children that I truly hope we convince that, one, science is cool, and no, really it is cool. It's not just your teacher or your dad saying that, and hopefully your mum as well. But no, it really is. Look what you can do with this stuff. And this is the kind of thing we need to be doing more. So that's what we're doing with Archer. But what we really need to do is help other people do outreach. I do go into schools. I'll admit it absolutely terrifies me. It's not what I thought I'd signed up for when I got a job in EPCC, but I go into schools, but I can only do a couple of visits a year. I have a day job. But what we really want to do is get a lot of people in universities around the UK going into their local school. So what we're developing is a pack of materials and a training program where we can say, this is the way to go into a school, these are the materials you need to buy, very simple stuff, and you can go and talk intelligently in a way that children understand about supercomputing and how awesome it is, because at the end of the day, it is awesome. So that's one of the things we're doing. Some of the activities we do post sorting. We talk about parallelism in the post office. You wouldn't believe how much you can talk about network contention when you're talking about post sorting. Talk about algorithms by using things like Towers of Hanoi. You can design your own supercomputer. You can actually do this right now on your phone. If you go to the EPCC outreach page, there's a link to design your own supercomputer. There's a little game you can play. We have built WeArchie, our demonstration supercomputer made out of Raspberry Pis, which we take around the country. And there will be instructions going live in the next month or so for building your own WeArchlet out of Raspberry Pis. And we hope that school groups will go and build their own WeArchlet. It has interconnect, it's a power supply. The only thing it doesn't have actually is cooling. It doesn't get that hot. And we have all sorts of other things, ball sorting, all to demonstrate parallelism. Another side that we do in the Archer Outreach project is diversity. And this is the bit that's very dear to my heart. Before I move on to women in HPC to finish off, some of the other things we're doing, we do have a diversity in HPC project where we really are just trying to showcase the fact that we are already quite a diverse field. We have best practice guides out there on the best ways to give training. There's a lot of evidence that says how we train our people. I mean, many of you probably are training not just the next generation in university undergraduate education, but you may well train your colleagues. How we do that impacts whether they're likely to go back and continue in what they've just learned. We have a Faces of HPC web page, which I'll show you a clip of in a moment. And then I'm very proud to say that Archer and EPCC also launched Women in HPC. Oh, this one here. This is the Faces of HPC project. If you go to diversity-hpc.ac.uk, you can find this. We've got a list of interviews and biographies of people, and we're just trying to show people, you know what, there is a huge range of individuals that are involved in HPC. And we come from a wide variety of backgrounds. Not everybody's a physicist or a chemist or a computer scientist. I have colleagues who've got a history degree. Who'd have thought? But you know what, there's nothing wrong with that. They're still fantastic. And we need to tell people that just because you don't fit what we expect as the standard model, you still belong in our community. That's what that project's really about. By the way, I'm constantly looking for volunteers to be interviewed for this, so if you're interested, please come and find me. And you don't have to be female or black or anything like that to be involved. It's about diversity. That means everybody. And then the final thing, women in high-performance computing. This is something I care about incredibly strongly. And I should say, this is about women in high-performance computing. It's not just for women in high-performance computing. It's about how do we get from the point of only 5% of our community being women to nearer 50%. How do we get women involved? How do we even begin to count? When I first started out, I realized that nobody else was counting, which is kind of strange when we count physics, chemistry, maths, engineering. Everybody else is counting. HPC isn't, because we sit across everything. But that's also fantastic news in that we have everybody to draw on. We have the entire academic community to draw on, and far more than that. So what do? We're here to educate. I go around the world, and I've got many colleagues that go around the world, telling people that this is one, something we need to do something about, and two, what can we do, and having that discussion. It's not simple. It's about empowering the women that are in our community to take part, to step up and participate. A lot of the time, if you're in an underrepresented group, you feel like it's a big barrier to participate. For many of you in this room, you probably haven't experienced that if you've come through a STEM degree. The most interesting one was a colleague of mine, a male colleague of mine, incredibly supportive of what Women in HPC is doing. walking into our workshop at Supercomputing last year. He walked in early, and there were already quite a lot of people there. He confessed to me later on that he walked out again because it was so intimidating walking into a room full of women. And I said, that's what it's been like for me my entire life. I was the only girl in school to do electronics. And yeah, it was intimidating. Yes, I never put my hand up in my undergraduate classes ever, but I got through it. And that's the problem. We need to empower the people that are underrepresented to take part. And it is, whichever way you look at it, it is a bigger hurdle than those that are in the majority. And it's no one's fault. I'm not blaming anybody for it, but we can change it. So we run workshops where we encourage a majority of women to come along. At Supercomputing, we have 30 early career women presenting their work at our workshop. We raise awareness of the importance of gender balance. We'll also be running a BOF at Supercomputing, for example, where we'll talk about the benefits of addressing unconscious bias, stereotype, threat, and imposter syndrome in the workplace. We put women on the stage. We encourage conferences to get female keynote speakers. Sometimes that's really hard. I was part of the organising committee to run Euro MPI this summer in Edinburgh. And I was like, we have to get women, we have to. It's actually really hard. There aren't that many women who are involved heavily in the MPI community. But you know what, when we started challenging ourselves to look outside our immediate networks, we did find women, and there were fantastic keynote speakers. But it does require us to look outside our immediate network. We've got to look outside the people that we go to every day, because those are the people that are already here, and we know that they're already predominantly men, but we do need female role models. And the other one is for encouraging women to meet other women, and this can have a huge impact. I was very skeptical of this myself. I've always been surrounded by men and was never particularly that bothered by it, apparently, except in hindsight I was. But in a community like this at the University of Birmingham, you will have a woman in a predominantly male group using HPC somewhere in the university, and somewhere else there'll be another woman. You need those two women to connect. Not because they don't get support from their immediate network, but sometimes it's nice to know somebody like you who is doing what you're doing. So it's really important we build local networks. So I would be delighted if there was a women's network here. We are hoping to set them up all around the world. And it's about connecting these people, putting them together. So how can you get involved with what we're doing? First of all, join. Women in HPC is crying out for membership. If you're interested, you don't have to be a woman. As I said, it's about women in HPC. It's not just for women in HPC. You can join. Membership is free. And you can also join as a non-profit. Universities can join as a chapter, and then with corporate membership as well, which is really key for helping us turn this into an international movement. Engage. Follow us on social media. If you join us, you'll also get our newsletter. Stay up to date with what we're doing. Contribute to our blog. Discuss this as a problem. If you're a female scientist, write for us on your blog. Be one of those women that showcases what women can do, and be that light to the next woman who's coming along going, but I don't know any women, maybe I can't do this. And then participate. We are at Supercomputing in just 3 weeks' time, and we have the biggest number of events we've ever run. It's kind of scary, but terribly exciting. We have 2 BOFs, a workshop, and we'll have an evening party as well. We have a growing number of events worldwide. Compute Canada hosted 2 events this summer because they were our first chapter. There's events going on at the University of Michigan shortly. Wherever you are in the world, wherever you've come from today, if you aren't from Birmingham, there will be events near you. Get involved. If you're at University of Birmingham, get involved here. Start running something. Get your colleagues, male or female, to discuss how we can move this forward. That's all I have time for. I can talk about this forever, so I'm happy to take questions afterwards. But if you want to find out more, those are some of the links I've talked about today. Please do. If you're interested in finding out more about Archer, email support@archer.ac.uk or come and talk to me afterwards. Thank you very much.
So I think we'll just push on, but you're going to be on the panel.
I am on the panel.
So it'd be great to have you there as well for a couple of questions.